Pembangunan Indonesia. And they published a journal, Indonesia Merdeka, which was to become a leading magazine of the Indonesian fight for independence against the Dutch in the 1920s. After this occasion, Adolf Bastian, in the 1930s, we have the first Institute on Indonesian Languages in Hamburg. There was taught Austronesian languages and Indonesian, Japanese, Balinese. And in the 1950s, there was for the first time also teaching on Indonesian culture, literature in Cologne. And it was only in the 1970s that we had other subjects, for instance, on ethnology and on politics and on culture that were established at German universities. When I started my own studies on Indonesia, I could not do it in Germany. I had to go to the Netherlands and find my professors and my archive material for my dissertation. It was already mentioned on Sukarno there. And I hope that this will now, under the activities of Edi Pratomo and his initiative to extend the BR-SISWEL system between Indonesia and Germany, that this will develop rather quickly, because the number of Indonesian students at German universities in the last 10 years went down. It was very high up in the 1960s, 70s, after the break between the Dutch and Indonesian governments because of Papua or Irian Jaya. When these relations were broken between Indonesia and the Dutch, the Indonesian students studying in the Netherlands were all coming to Germany, and they found it a good decision to be in Germany. They invited other people, and we had almost 4,000 students every year coming there, and the best known, the most famous among them was your president, Takharuddin Habibi. He was a student in Aachen in the 60s, 70s, and so on, and he is considered to be really the leading expert on German education in Indonesia, and we hope there might be new Habibis in the coming years produced by the exchange system that is going to be extended. So much, I think, for the information of the status of relations between Indonesia and Germany in the field of culture. And now, with regard to the subject of our discussion, further on, I see, to my pleasure, that we have Bapak Sugeng Sarjadi sitting here next to us. I only came to know him a few moments ago, and I saw the titles of his book, and I think that he is the one who should give the talk that I am now trying to give to you in the forthcoming minutes. But he is sitting there and he can correct me and give advice, you know, what I should improve or so. Since I am not an expert on constitutional development, I am a simple historian who was thinking how can something of great interest now in our days in both countries, on Indonesia and in Germany, be tackled in a conference like this. And therefore, I choose the development of democracy in Germany and Indonesia since the end of World War II. And I choose it also because 1945 marked for both countries a new beginning of their history, a decisive year. The constitutions in both countries also strongly reflect traditional values of their respective societies. And third point, both new countries had to face dramatic developments and dramatic challenges in the first decades of their existence, and which finally was decisive, this point, in both countries, by the end of the 20th century, democracy movements were successful without bloodshed on a greater scale, a stunning achievement if contrasted with countries in other parts of the world with similar problems and authoritarian regimes. Let me give an overview of the developments in Germany with a focus on the 4 points mentioned above before I will start my discussions on developments in Indonesia. On May 8, 1945, after the unconditional surrender of the German army to the Allies, not only a war was lost, the whole country was bombed to pieces, and even worse, the proud reputation of a civilized nation was destroyed for years to come. A dozen years of Nazi rule had caused the disaster, which in the memory of those who had lived through it, and I lived through it from the beginning to the end, is still a nightmare. To analyze only this would already require a series of seminars, so I have to be brief. Although there had already been democratic movements in Germany early in the 19th century, with the highlights of the Parliament of Frankfurt in 1848, attended by delegates from all parts of the German country, the democratic movement was not able to survive the attacks of reactionary forces, which finally succeeded to suppress the quest for a democratic government and created instead the Imperial German Reich, and were, together with other hardliners, responsible for World War I. The Verfassung, the Constitution of the Republic of Weimar, the successor of the German Reich, in 1919 tried for the first time to institutionalize democratic principles in our country. In the first years of the Weimar Republic, people suffered under the severe punishments and reparation rulings of the Peace Treaty of Versailles in 1919. Therefore, it was easy for Hitler and his gang to win followers among the masses, gain victories in elections, and finally take over power in 1933 with the results mentioned already above. The Allies, in charge of the administration of Germany in the years after the German defeat, saw in 1948 that the Russians were about to create a communist state in East Germany. Therefore, they asked the representatives of the re-emerging Länder of West Germany in 1948 to prepare a new constitution for a new German state in the West as well, and the Federal Republic of Germany came into being. The result, the so-called Grundgesetz, was accepted in May 1949. In September, the first president and the first chancellor of the new state, Bundesrepublik Deutschland, were elected. The Soviet Union created their East German state, the DDR, 1 month later. on October 7, 1949. This was a new beginning in Germany. The Western powers still claimed the right of formal control until 1955, but they did not make use of it. The more control one could find in East Germany, however, and in June 1953 there was already the first rebellion against the communist government, which was suppressed by Russian tanks. And in 1961, on August 13, the East German population even went a step, the government even went a step further. The regime built the famous or infamous wall in East Berlin, and they sharply guarded the border between East and West Germany, shooting the people who dared to run away from their communist home. For West Germans, these events in the East strengthened their belief in a liberal constitution, guaranteeing the freedom of the person, equality before the law, equal chances for men and women, freedom of religion, of the press, of opinion, and of assembly. And they put also in the constitution a quest for reunification. The first section of the West German Grundgesetz of the German Constitution of 49, however, starts that with the acknowledgement of the dignity of human beings and that it is the duty of a responsible government to protect and defend the dignity like human rights as a basis of human societies of peace and justice in the world. And since many of you know already German, this very first sentence of the German Constitution, I will also read here in German. Die Würde des Menschen ist unantastbar. Sie zu achten und zu schützen ist Verpflichtung aller staatlichen Gewalt. Das deutsche Volk bekennt sich darum zu unverletzlichen, unveräußerlichen Menschenrechten als Grundlage jeder menschlichen Gemeinschaft. Words like these reflect the regret about the crimes committed during the Nazi regime, as well as the acceptance of the demands of the First International Conference on Human Rights in 1948. In order to prevent a new dictatorship, some of the weaknesses of the Weimar Constitution were removed. The emergency powers of the president were taken away. The position of the chancellor was strengthened by decreeing that a vote of non-confidence in him is only valid if at the same time a new chancellor is elected into office. So there would be no vacancies in which an agitator could try to gain votes and backing. Furthermore, the parties formerly seen as a necessary evil were encouraged to actively contribute to the formation of the political will of the electorate. On paper, this sounds all very convincing, very democratic. But when rightist movements in the 1960s caused new fears in the stability of the state, new emergency powers were created in 1968 with a right to resistance against the government. And these new provisions against the extreme right-wing parties were later used in the 1970s and 80s by extreme leftist groups, which now attack the security of the state with terrorist acts from the left. And later, with the rise of the Green Party, There was increasing concern about the protection of the environment and protest against the use of nuclear energy. There were discussions in the parties whether the wishes of the electorate should be followed or not. And in a growing number of cases, wishes were heard to replace the form of representative government or representative democracy by that of a direct democracy, by demanding a referendum of the people instead of a parliamentary discussion. A new word became famous, which you might have heard, the Wutbürger, or furious citizens, who saw their own interests in danger, irrespective of the needs of the society at large. The Supreme Court in Germany, the Bundesverfassungsgericht, created in 1951 to protect the Constitution, was appealed to more and more often by the government as well as by the media and conception to bury the parties and to reinstitute the Constitution of 1945, which was finally done by decree on the 4th of July in 1959. In my paper, I now describe more or less the things or I give at least the voices of authorities on what frauds were developing in the area, but I will here try to skip this. I only want to say that the direct democracy in Burma, Indonesia, after 1959, with the two phases, the direct democracy under Sukarno and the on-the-farm system under Suharto, really were a challenge for many Indonesian people who cling to democratic values. But after all, in 1998, as you all see, even though Suharto had won 7 elections, with huge majorities, and he had a huge apparatus around himself to govern the new order system. Within 2 months after his re-election, he had to leave the office because of international pressure, the monetary demands, and so on. He was not able to fulfill this because his own system of support for his government wouldn't be breaking apart. And then it was, I must say that my time was so limited, my dear Chairman. If I had known that, then I would have left house out otherwise. But in case one of the other questions comes up, we can have it in the discussion. And I apologize for the public. I should also have dropped all the Indonesian relations and the university actions and behind them, but I thought this was a topic.
In the 2 years to come, we will collect about $5 trillion GDP with about 300 million people. Even bilateral trade and commercial, if we do it right, I hope President Yudhoyono will come, or your Chancellor will come to Indonesia, Madam Merkel. I hope there will be an open door to tighten up more business. We have cloth, palm oil, and agricultural things, and you have technology. And Mercedes and BMW still so much used by people around here. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you very much for your presentation, for your lecture. And I was saying before, Mr. Surin, so yes, that you should have talked, should have presented this lecture here, because you have written 2 books in the last 2 years on exactly this issue, and I had 1 week to prepare on 2 countries, and never dealt with this sort of question. I just wanted to have something here in order to evoke discussion, and that is really what succeeded, and I am very grateful. I made my notes, and in many of the things I agree. But you are an economist, or at least in the budget plays a major role in your discussions and so on. I am a historian. For me, developments, grow out of certain environments and certain challenges and so on. Yes. And for me, it was the problem here, how could a state like Indonesia that 30 years had to live under democracy, the pimping of Suharto, within practically a couple of weeks, could get rid of this authoritarian government and start a new phase in Indonesian development in the direction of democracy. This is for me really something extraordinary. Good. That is why I admire the Indonesian public, the Indonesian people, and that is what I tried to express here in the pages that I had to skip.
Very good.
Our chairman here, he should have told me before that I have restricted time, and I would have left something out that was not so important. But the historical development, my whole life I have been working on the unitarian system, on the state of Indonesia with all the islands. I have done multitude of studies on other traditions in Sumatra, in Tapanuli, in Flores, and in other parts of Indonesia. It is of course clear for me that this state like Indonesia has different challenges than a state like Germany that has developed its own unitarian state already in the 19th century. And you are still struggling with it, and with all your provinces, you know the number, and all your Kabupaten and so on. This is definitely a challenge, and not only corruption, as you were saying, and the threat of the oligarchs and so on. I think there are many, many more things, but I am happy that we have the chance to exchange our ideas, and this all really helps the general audience to clarify its ideas about the development of democracy in our 2 countries.
Yes, my remark, Professor, only one. In history, there is nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
And history, according to Toynbee, is only challenges and respond. The response one day will become challenge, like Indonesia during the authoritarian. It is the response of being ruled by Sukarno, a dictator, then come to Suharto. Then of course the military is still very strong that day, and the political ambition comes then, and it becomes challenge to the new generation. The response now, if this is what you are looking here, the growth, the impatience of the people, the oligarch, the practices of political parties, which is not yet resolved. But Toynbee says it's always like that. Challenge, respond, and then respond become challenge. Then challenge, respond again. That is the Toynbee history. Of course, this is different than Thomas Carlyle, for example. I'm also I'm amazed with his story, and I learn a lot about history too. So I'm glad to see you here. I will. Good.
Terima kasih. Sekarang waktu untuk berdiskusi. I'd like to invite the participants for questions. Bisa disampaikan dalam bahasa Inggris atau bahasa Indonesia. Kami persilakan Bapak dan Ibu Sunariati. Untuk 5 orang penanya dulu, 2 lagi, ke-4, ke-5. Ya, kami persilakan Ibu Sunariati.
Terima kasih untuk kesempatan ini. I was interested in hearing what differences you can point out in the development of democracy in your compared to the development in our country, Indonesia. Because as I understood also from your lecture, Professor, democracy in Germany was perhaps already there before Hitler's time. And after Hitler and the communists, perhaps you developed a new kind of democracy in your country, so that nowadays what was formerly East Germany and West Germany can now live hand in hand peacefully and develop together. Although, of course, I assume there may be problems, but the problems seem not to be as big as the problems we have with Indonesia now, especially after we have become very democratic with the amendments we had of our Constitution. For instance, I was flabbergasted to find in our Constitution the whole, or maybe 99% of our human rights law included in the amendments of the Constitution. To me, this seemed to be something which makes our life today very difficult, especially because we have already constitutional court, which sometimes misuse or uses their competence beyond what is expected from a constitutional court. That is menguji materi di dalam bahasa judicial review. So, indeed, the problems we face nowadays are in fact very, very big problems. Although I'm proud, of course, of what you have mentioned, what made us independent. Because my father was also part of that student, activities at that time, and also was one of the Indonesian fighting people, students, and wherever, when we became a lawyer, that's why he made me a lawyer. But just because of that, I'm very worried. I was one of those people who also fought and fought democracy in the university at Unpad. But nowadays, seeing everything what happens here now, everybody claiming that our leaders are useless, people are corrupt, but don't know how to correct those things. Because I'm already very old, I'm worried that our next generation, or next generations, this is my children and my grandchildren, we have to live in a country which do not have regard for the law. We all say that we believe in supremacy of law, but what we see every day, every minute in Indonesia, in the papers, on TV, in magazines, and also in discussions, is not what I envisage as a democratic society. Because I thought that there would be more peace, that we would be more respecting each other. But what we do now is only condemning other people and thinking that we are ourselves best of all. And this is perhaps a difference in generation. And our generation was perhaps too weak. We didn't dare to criticize other people. But these people of this generation, in the name of democracy and in the name of human rights, they say that they can do everything what they want. And this is also, I think, something which is not good. Now, my question to Professor Dam is, how did you in Germany reconcile the ideas of the people who were communists with those who were non-communists, so that you could create a more peaceful and a very prosperous society? Because I think Africa of television, prosperous society, despite differences in history. Thank you very much.
Pertanyaan kedua, Bapak penanya kedua sekarang di sini.
Thank you, Professor Dam. This question is for you, because I forgot when I studied in Germany that this question will be answered. How do the German political parties get their funding without being honored? And in addition to that, are there recons about the plan of Helmut Kohl, who refused to disclose when he received from where 2 million, I don't know gross mark.
Bapak rupanya tahu the difference in history. Bapak menyinggung kita baru 14 tahun. Menurut Pak Sugeng, kita perlu 50 tahun lagi, Pak. Karena Jerman ya juga perlu 60 tahun. Terima kasih, Pak.
Saya persilakan penanya ketiga. Sebelah sini, Pak. Itu dulu.
Guten Tag, Professor Dam. Selamat sore, Pak Sugeng. Mein Name ist Nadia Abidin. Nama saya Nadia Abidin. Ich habe 2 kleine Fragen für Sie. Saya punya 2 pertanyaan untuk Pak Sugeng juga. Die erste Frage ist, finden Sie die Entwicklung der deutschen Demokratie heute besser als Indonesien? Menurut Pak Sugeng, kira-kira menurut Bapak, perkembangan demokrasi di Indonesia saat ini apakah lebih baik daripada Jerman ataukah Jerman lebih baik daripada Indonesia? Und die zweite Frage ist, würden Sie Ihren föderalen System empfehlen, die jetzigen indonesischen Einheitssysteme zu ersetzen, da unsere unser System irgendwie so wirkt, als ob es Korruption unterstützt. Menurut Pak Sugeng, ini kira-kira seandainya diwacanakan di negara kita untuk digunakan sistem federal, kira-kira Bapak akan mendukung tidak gagasan itu untuk menggantikan sistem negara kesatuan kita, mengingat sistem kita seolah-olah mendukung kehadiran korupsi. Vielen Dank, terima kasih.
Terima kasih, silakan penanya keempat.
Kemana dulu Pak? Kesana, kesini? Sana dulu.
Ya, terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I would like to introduce myself, Tristia, alumni Fakultas Ekonomi Akuntansi, angkatan 81 saya. Saya akuntan, sudah 25 tahun bekerja di perusahaan minyak, di antaranya Unocal, Chevron, dan sekarang kebetulan di Lapindo, Pak. Saya ingin sharing sedikit. Saya masuk Lapindo tahun 2007. Kejadian ini 29 Mei 2006. Jadi saya setuju dengan Pak Sugeng tadi, kenapa tidak ditangani dulu penutupannya, ini langsung salah benar. Saya sosial backgroundnya, tidak teknis. Kalau dilihat ini adalah pertanggal 29 Mei, foto ini kebetulan saya bawa foto, dan selalu saya bawa ini di BlackBerry saya. Dan ini tidak pernah terekspos bahwa sebenarnya sumur saya ini ada di sini, sumur eksplorasi Pak. Ini 200 meter, ini semburan lumpurnya Pak. Keluarnya itu per hari itu 100.000 barrel ekuivalen minyak. Kalau keluarnya minyak pasti nggak akan ribut Pak. Kebetulan keluarnya lumpur. Dan sekarang kita mau nangani waktu itu, anggaran kami itu hanya 200 miliar. Karena kita pengen menutup supaya lumpur ini tidak masuk ke sumur saya. Ini sumur eksplorasi. Tapi kenyataan, bludak itu akhirnya ketutup juga sumur kita Pak. Terbukti setelah sekian bulan sumur kami itu kering, tidak ada lumpurnya keluar. Nah setelah diteliti, beberapa dari Rusia, dari beberapa Amerika segala, ini bukan keluar dari sumur. Jadi tidak terbukti bahwa misalnya pemerintah masukkan bola-bola, mungkin teman-teman pernah dengar masukkan bola, hilang bola itu karena itu luasnya si lubang itu tidak bisa diukur. Nah kami waktu itu pemiliknya ada 3 Pak, Lapindo sendiri, kami kantornya di Houston sebenarnya, lalu yang kedua Medco 32% dan Santos Australia 18%. 2007 setelah keluar itu lumpur, Medco mundur Pak. Lalu 2008 Santos mundur. Kalau itu perusahaan asing mungkin udah kabur Pak. Ini ya sharing aja. Ketika belum ada keputusan Mahkamah Agung, kami memberikan empati kepada masyarakat untuk mengganti apa yang terendam. Akhirnya kami melakukan jual beli. Karena kami Lapindo sebagai perusahaan minyak tidak boleh membeli tanah. Karena tanah itu akan milik negara. Akhirnya jual beli Pak. Jual beli dan kita pasang tanggul. Dan sekarang per hari ini itu sudah dirupiahkan itu 8 triliun rupiah dari perusahaan kita. Tidak ada dari negara Pak. Mohon itu dipahami, tidak ada dari negara.
Bisa dipersingkat?
Iya, saya singkat. Jadi sudah keluar 2 Mahkamah Agung inkrah bahwa Lapindo tidak bersalah. Dan inkrahnya itu ada gugatan dari LBH dan ada dari Walhi bahwa Lapindo tidak bersalah. Saya ingin sharing aja, kebetulan ini ilmuwan, kalau dengar apa itu yang kejadian. Jadi ini adalah sekarang yang terendam itu 650 hektar. Ini beda desa Pak. Ini sumur di desa Kedung Bonto kalau nggak salah, ini Siring namanya. Makanya Pak Bupati tersinggung dan sangat berat hati, dibilang lumpur, tadinya lumpur Lapindo, tapi kita bilang kan bukan Lapindo ini, ada Sidoarjo. Malah dia bilang jangan lumpur Sidoarjo, harusnya lumpur Siring karena satu desa. Dan itu hanya 1% luas daripada Sidoarjo. Jadi saya ingin sharing aja, dan ini sudah diekspos kemana-mana, gambar ini nggak pernah terbuka. Ya. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih, dan selanjutnya penanya kelima.
Baik, terima kasih. My name is Iftida. I am the alumni of Law Faculty Unpad. I would like to have an opinion from both of you, Professor Dam and Pak Sugeng. First is how long that we have to wait until the democracy will turn into the welfare state. Yeah. The second one I think is related to what Professor Sunaryati said before, that now the democracy is become the democracy. Yeah, people want to get what they want by force. I'm dealing a lot with the labor. So I also Vice Secretary General of the Employers Association of Indonesia. We're dealing with the union. And now union, even they have the Garda Metal, Pak. It's something like a guard for themselves. And they will sweeping the factory and also push people to join if they have strike. So I think I would like to have your opinion, because now the entrepreneurs or the enterprises, they turn to become importer rather than investor. They don't want to build the factory in Indonesia, but they want only as a reseller. Thank you.
Terima kasih. Ya, Bapak boleh penanya terakhir, silakan.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask to Professor Dam about democracy. How your opinion or your prediction about democracy in Indonesia? Of course, based upon our characteristic in nature and culture, as Pak Sugeng explained. Because if you are talking about democracy, especially in Europe, I think democracy in Europe is not everything. Like in England, in Netherlands, in Belgium, I think they have no experience. They have no best experience in democracy. Thank you very much.
Terima kasih.
Back to it, and I'll try to do my best in answering them. The first question, the lady lawyer from Bandung, whose father was at the Palembang, Indonesia, and trying to fight for Indonesian independence. And if I understood you correctly, you asked about the future of democracy in Germany, how the German solved the problem of former communists, the experience.
Two groups. How did did Germany reconcile the two ideologies, yeah, of those of East Germany and West Germany, yeah, so that whenever the Berlin Wall was torn down, you could come or become one nation again and a democratic nation. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, as far as the western part is concerned of Germany, the non-communist sector, they were from the beginning very much interested in reunification, and they even wrote it into our constitution. Whereas in East Germany, it was different. You had young groups emerging in the course of time who felt a sort of identity with the East German regime. And there was even in the demonstrations finally leading to the end of the German Democratic Republic, there was almost at no time a word about reunification, but the other side, they wanted to reform their state, but remain East Germany and remain values that they were not seeing in West Germany. For instance, they were attacking a free fight liberalism in West Germany. They were attacking elbow society, and they thought that in the communist state these things were better provided for. So after reunification, this later sector of those who were skeptical about the West German constitution, it was difficult for them to integrate. They had their own party, the Die Linke, and they still nowadays try to formulate aims that they think that is, in their opinion, the right development, and they are very fruitful opposition in the Bundestag. But the great majority of those who were joining the communist system were opportunists, and they were, as soon as possible, throwing away all their affiliation with anything that goes communist, and were joining the West and were happy to be on the other side. I think this is more or less the situation. You still have in the Linke some convinced people that think there are defects in West German constitution and or in the actual democratic system in West Germany. And since your neighbor is sitting just next to you, there was, if I see a similar question from your side, how long do we have to wait until democracy is realized? And also a question about the West German democratic state.
Until democracy will give the impact on the welfare to the society.
Yeah. Well, you know, the West German, somebody was also asking this question, since when did you arrive at democracy? When do you think we had our democracy? I think the West Germans at the moment are rather skeptical about their own system. I spoke about the Bundesverfassungsgericht, the Supreme Court, which is approached practically again and again by groups thinking they are acting in accordance with the German constitution, and others are against it, even the government. They criticize government measures and they want to have the right. And just because of the feeling that there might be, with our representative government, not everything in correct, you know, they even abstain from voting. They say whatever party we choose, nothing will be changed and so on. It is a somewhat critical situation of democracy in Germany, changing with the time is coming, new parties emerging, getting great masses of people interested in their program, like the Pirate Party. I don't know whether you follow German news, that came practically out of nothing, but they have no program whatsoever. And people that vote for them, they are disappointed with the existing system and with the existing parties. They say they are only trying to come to power at the next election time, but they are not really representing the wishes of the people, and the wishes of the people is to get rid of nuclear energy, is a wish of having no new airport strips built around their houses and so on. The wishes of the citizens who want to live in peace and not to become victim of the great firms and concentration of industrial machinations, who want to build that strip or want to build a new main station in Stuttgart. Hundreds of thousands of people were protesting in the streets, which should be the work of the parties. They are representing the people, and therefore you hear more and more claims they want to have direct democracy. They want to have people's decision, a referendum on particular issues, and not waiting until this or that party is taking care of them. So it's, they are far away from what they think really, if we have a real good working democratic system. They are dissatisfied, and therefore our electorate going to elections is under 50% in many cases, and that is really not a system that could be an ideal for democratic relations. So you can do with me what you want. But it is always possible for people, or for parties, that the same comes to the open, that they receive money for certain political directions or for certain political realizations, which is forbidden according to German law. Yeah. I don't know whether you have also something in Indonesia and in Germany, democratic development by the young lady over there addressing me in German. Could you please, Supomo was trying to place the Indonesian democracy in the constitution on the Musyawarah system. In the Musyawarah system, it is only natural that you give something to the other in order to get his agreement, to get the mufakat. And this is, finally, let me tell you one example that I was seeing in Tapanuli, Selatan, when I was doing research. There was money given to a village, the money of the president. Many of the villages got, in the 1970s and 80s, got money because they had certain projects that ought to be developed. And in that particular village, not in Mandailing, in Tapanuli, Selatan, I think in Angola, it was in Angola, they had money at their disposal, and there were two groups. One group wanted to build a school, and the other group wanted to have medical care. So this, how do you call this? Apotheke, the pharmacy, a pharmacy shop, and both of them discussed it, and nobody was willing to give in, and then they had to find a compromise, and they built a bridge in order to get better to another village where you had both.
Jadi pertanyaan yang menarik dan statement yang menarik itu yang menggembirakan. Seandainya kita tidak menganut, tidak ada reformasi, kalau saya ditanya memilih mana sekarang atau dulu, saya memilih sekarang. Seandainya demokrasi tidak seperti sekarang, mungkin Profesor Dam ini dan kita tidak bisa bicara semacam ini. Mungkin di pojok sana ada Bakin, ada apa itu, Bae, segala macam. Sekarang kan saya bahagia sekali ada Pak Jeng, siapa namanya tadi di belakang, bisa berbahasa Jerman begitu fluently, ini kan mengagumkan ya. Jadi kalau saya ditanya mengenai demokrasi, reformasi ini sudah membawa, kalau saya boleh mengatakan, di dalam ilmu ekonomi sekarang ini kan, kalau yang ahli statistik tadi yang baca ekonomi kan, angka-angkanya itu angka-angka statistik, tapi tidak pernah menyebut tapi tidak bisa dikuantifikasikan, yaitu mengenai indeks kebahagiaan. Saya beberapa kali menulis, saya ucapkan, coba bayangin, otonomi sekarang ini menurut saya hampir mendekati federal sekarang itu. Dengan otonomi ini sebetulnya tumbuh juga bibit-bibit quote-unquote feudalisme di sana. Jadi mau federal yang dari awal atau yang terbentuk tanpa sengaja sekarang ini demikian. Tetapi, nah ini tetapinya, kan kita lagi demam bola ini, ya toh. Tapi kita lihatnya itu Spanyol kemarin menang melawan Italia. Tapi coba bapak-bapak lihat tadi malam itu Sriwijaya FC, saya separuh apa menang atau kalah dengan Pelita Jaya gitu. Tapi ramenya itu kayak yang nonton itu bahagianya itu bukan main. Jadi tepuk tangannya, bajunya, teriaknya, genderangnya itu seperti misalnya pertandingan Real Madrid sama Barcelona. Lamongan punya Persatuan Sepak Bola, kemudian Persiram punya, kemudian Persiba, malahan Pekalongan, kampung saya ada, cuman dia ada di divisi yang agak sedikit kurang bagus. Yang menarik adalah ini pertumbuhan yang bukan main. Di samping Zheng tadi yang bisa berbahasa Jerman yang seperti itu, tapi bola juga. Cuman saya agak pro, maaf, saya pro ini Liga Super. Yang Liga Primer agak kurang rame, jadi tidak ada yang nonton. Tapi yang Super itu kayak Real Madrid, kayak Barcelona. Itu adalah salah satu pertumbuhan mengenai kalau mau mengukur indeks kebahagiaan. Jadi Pak Menteri tidak usah khawatir, yang kreatif banyak sekali di Indonesia itu. Betapa industri Pak Menteri, jangan lupa itu bola. Pohon industrinya juga apa namanya? Sepatu, kemudian kaos, kemudian ikat kepala dan lain-lain, itu juga lapangan kerja dan lain-lain. Jadi demokrasi kita sekarang pemain asing juga nggak apa-apa di kita. Jadi ada pertumbuhan. Kedua, coba bapak-bapak, saya dengan saudara Mahir waktu itu pagi-pagi lihat apa itu yang car free jam 6 sampai jam 10 di Bundaran Senayan, Bundaran HI yang biasanya demo-demo. Tapi kalau bapak lihat sekarang itu bule ekspatriat itu naik sepeda, ketawa-ketawa. Yang dari Taiwan juga kelihatan begitu. I think you have to go to 6 o'clock, ini ambassador, bukan yang Jerman, FMS, you go 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock bicycling, you will see how big Indonesia is and how free we are. Ini juga tanda-tanda bahwa kemarin saya debat mengenai failed state. Failed state, kita dituduh oleh dunia luar itu failed state. What is failed state? Kalau lihat nanti malam sih lihat NTV pasti ada bola. Tiap malam lihatlah bola itu nggak ada tanda-tanda. Ibu Naryo, nggak ada tanda-tanda failed state, nggak ada. Jadi kalau tadi menanyakan bagus mana kita dengan Jerman, saya melihat in 5 years kita akan catch up mengenai itu. Tetapi, nah ini tetapinya ini kalau masalah pornografi, orang Islam pada demo semua. Tapi kalau masalah korupsi nggak ada pemimpin Islam. Partai Islam nggak ada yang ngomong satupun. Tapi kalau pornografi wih baris tuh. Apalagi PKS. Kalau masalah Palestina 300.000. Tapi kalau masalah korupsi nggak ada yang ngomong satupun. Ini yang saya bedakan dari partai politik political party di Jerman itu at work. Di sini tidak, Bu Naryo. Ini masalahnya gitu. Jadi milih-milih. Mana-mana yang bagus dia ikut. Mana-mana yang kurang kena enggak. Jadi tidak satu orang pun ketika itu pencetakan Al-Quran itu dikorup, dia adalah anggota Partai Golkar, borok-borok ketua umumnya, semua membela. Masih, nah ini panjenengan kan ahli hukum, presumption of innocence dipakai. Padahal kalau mempelajari ilmu hukum waktu saya kuliah pertama di tingkat pertama, yang memiliki boleh mengatakan presumption of innocence itu hakim, bukan si terdakwa. Kok yang terdakwa ngomong? Hakim itu yang menentukan, mental saya nggak boleh nuduh orang itu sebelum terbukti. Ini yang terdakwa yang bilang, ntar dulu, buktikan dulu gua salah. Loh. Betul ya Bu? Kira-kira begitu. Jadi ini satu salah kaprah yang harus dijelaskan oleh kita semua, karena ini kan para akademisi. Saya sekali lagi kagum dengan yang berbahasa Jerman seperti itu, persis kalau saya ngomong Jawa. Nah berikutnya, ini yang penting kita ya, kita ini pada sesungguhnya itu feodal. Ini yang repot. Jadi kalau ngomong harus hati-hati, ya tepos liro, unggah-ungguh. Jadi kalau mereka ini kalau ngomong kan to the point, betul Kak Ibu Nadia. Kalau kita mau ngomong kadang muter-muter dulu gitu. Saya tadi kalau nggak ngomong memang iya kok. Pokoknya orang Islam kalau pornografi pasti ributnya naudzubillah. Undang-undang perkawinan, woi itu pasti ribut. Tapi undang-undang perguruan tinggi nggak ada yang peduli tentang itu. Jadi ini masalah pokok. Jadi Lapindo, begini dek, saya nggak peduli Anda mau ngambil tanah itu, tetapi itu di Gulf of Mexico yang kemarin BP itu 2000 di bawah laut. Anda jangan debat soal sumur kalian di sini, ini keluarnya sini, bullshit itu. Sekarang mau saya tanya, itu Abu Rizal bisa nggak nutup itu gitu loh, for the nation, apalagi dia ketua Golkar sekarang gitu loh. Kalau nggak bisa ngapain jadi ketua partai gitu loh, as simple as that. Jadi saya nggak mau debatan itu karena saya bukan politisi, saya pengamat, dan saya nggak mau debatan soal siapa yang salah yang benar. Bangsa Indonesia, jeng pakai bahasa Jerman nanti, tolong sampaikan pada dia. Kalaulah kita ini bangsa Jerman, kalaulah kita ini seperti Habibie, that mud dalam waktu 6 bulan harus bisa nutup. Berapa biayanya? 1 triliun, 2 triliun, just do it. Rakyat, jangan sampai ada yang jalan dari situ Arjo tuh ngos-ngosan, yang disalahin presiden lagi gitu. Belum tentu presiden salah, ya kan? Yang disalahin dia lagi, ngos-ngosan gitu. Saya hanya menghimbau IKA Unpad, kalau perlu, nah ini kalau zaman dulu kan statement ya mas, statement gitu. Mestinya mahasiswa sekarang itu minta itu sumur ditutup, berapapun kita bisa bayar. Kalau hanya 1 triliun buat Indonesia chicken feed itu, kecil banget. Apalagi bangun gedung KPK cuma 200 miliar, aduh kecil banget itu, nggak setuju. Dan yang paling nggak setuju Golkar gitu loh. Hebat nggak? Saya nggak tahu di mana gitu, tapi juga yang lain-lain termasuk PKS dan lain nggak bunyi. Ibu Naryo, kalaulah kita ini nggak ada NGO, tidak ada ICW, nggak ada Kontras, nggak ada apalagi NGO itu, emangnya ada yang bergerak? Nggak ada Ibu. Jadi semua ide-ide di masyarakat, demokrasi at work, karena itu lembaga-lembaga swadaya itu Pak Sabta. Jadi ini mesti Pak Sabta harus merangkul ini teman-teman ini, karena mereka lah yang bergerak. Jadi Bapak-Bapak sekalian, once again I enjoy being with you, Prof. And I hope the next time you invite me to Germany and I will speak. And
yes. But only at short notice.
Right.
1 week before you get the subject, yeah.
Terima kasih, Bapak.
Hadirin yang saya hormati, we have just followed very productive and interesting discussions shared by both speakers on the topic on the development of democracy in Germany and Indonesia. Professor Bernard Dahm has described and shared German experience in struggling for democracy, and Pak Sugeng Sarjadi has mentioned some differences between Indonesia and Germans in terms of political system, geographical situation, and maybe legal system. But one of the most interesting for me, correct me if I'm wrong, Professor Bernard Dahm, there is some interesting similarity between Indonesia and Jerman in struggling for democracy. There is no bloodshed, especially for Indonesia after the step down of President Soeharto in 1998. Jadi kata kunci dari saya, democracy is not taken for granted. Kita harus memperjuangkan demokrasi, dan kata Pak Sugeng tidak boleh lelah untuk kita tidak boleh lelah. Big applause for our speakers. Terima kasih atas perhatiannya, dan kita harus menyelesaikan diskusi pada pukul kurang lebih 6.30. Terima kasih atas undangannya kepada saya, khususnya dari Pak Sabta, untuk memimpin diskusi ini dan bertemu dengan pembicara kita yang luar biasa ini. Thank you very much. Pak Sugeng, terima kasih.
Okay, terima kasih. Give a big applause for all of us here. for the speakers and also for the moderator. Please stay with us because I would like to invite to the stage His Excellency Ambassador Bapak Edi Pratomo and also Honorable Vice Minister Bapak Sapta Nirwandar for
This is Professor Batik, one of the economic creative or industry creative from Indonesia. I hope you can worry this one. I think you can open it because this is one of the transparency system. Yes, I can open also. Ini supaya yes.